Now, it's about this time of year we in Far North Queensland start making preparations and talking to people who know about what the summer brings or potentially could bring up here. Generally speaking, people think about circulations out of the Coral Sea potentially headed our way, which is how the conversation went last week. And at that stage, I remember thinking, we've got to talk to Heath. Bradley's with Sure Insurance, because a whole lot of people need to fundamentally be reminded about the importance of insurance heading into the cyclone season up here. Now, this is all about La Nina. This has just come off the net. And it's under the heading, La Nina is back. How long and strong will it be? And should we prepare for more flooding? So it's all about the flooding, because that's the impact it had in southeast Queensland and northern New South Wales. Does it actually mean that there's a slightly higher or substantially higher chance of cyclones? Don't know. Anyway, it says here, it looks as though this La Nina could be weak and short-lived, but those with long memories will recall the last La Nina summer was also expected to be short, yet the flooding came regardless. So how long and strong will this La Nina be, and should we expect more flooding? The question up here is, what should we be doing? And of course, when it comes to insurance, this gentleman's been very much focused on our challenges up here for some years now. Managing Director, Sure Insurance, Bradley Heath, good morning.
Good morning, John.
Brad, up here, and it's like having antenna, because those of us who've experienced a big blow know that in summertime it can be really, really quite nerve-wracking, and they know that there are certain things to do, of course, preparing your home, etc., for the onset of strong winds. In your view, when we're talking about La Nina, is there a higher likelihood of circulations headed our way or crossing the Queensland coast with a La Nina, or is it all about the floods?
Look, it's about both, John. And on paper, the likelihood of cyclones is greater for sure. In the years that are El Nino, then we would see less of a cyclone likelihood. However, cyclones have occurred and have caused damage during El Nino, and vice versa. We've seen La Nina periods, as we just had. And yes, we had cyclones in North Queensland last summer, but not they caused very little to negligible damage. So it really is, it's about the existence of cyclones, the strength of them, and whether they cross the coast. And this is nothing new to people in regional Queensland. They understand all this, and I think they understand very much what to do in an event. And yes, there are flood potential as well, and we saw that last summer, but not in so much in regional Queensland, but we have seen it before. But the other thing to think about is storms as well, so that the higher level of rain, even if you're not a flood risk, you really need to make sure you're ready for higher levels of flood, and making sure that your home is protected even from that. Even if flood's not going to come out of the ground, it still can come through the ceiling.
Yeah, let me ask you about, it's a basic thing, I think we've touched on it before, the requirement, this is insurance companies generally, I think. If, for example, there is something cropping up on the weather map it on your television screens, for example, at the news, but it's not a cyclone yet, not a declared circulation, doesn't have a name. At that stage, can you, generally speaking, acquire insurance cover, or is it already too late once there is some circulation despite the fact that it hasn't been named?
Look, it'll depend on the company, it'll depend on the insurer, and many policies have a 48 or a 72-hour exclusion from the point at which you take the cover out from being covered for storm and cyclone. That's if you didn't have previous insurance. If you're transferring from one company to the other, then that's not an issue. But we, like anything else, we would encourage people to get your insurance straight before the summer season. Get out and get a quote. To check your current price. If you think you're paying too much, then get out and get a quote. If you think your sum insured's not high enough, review the sum insured. Go to the many online calculators across the board and just check the value of your house. They're the two things we would suggest people do sooner rather than later. And in some cases, yes, it can be too late when the cyclone's about to cross the coast. And most people, I think, will understand that the insurance companies probably won't be giving cover in that situation, and often some insurance companies, what's called embargo the area, where they won't write business until the cyclone is passed. In Sure's case, we just recommend go and get a quote now, go and get the cover, don't leave it too late. The last thing you want to be messing around with when a cyclone's about to hit is to go and get cover.
Yeah, exactly. By the way, let's talk about the flooding issue in Cairns. Before you had opened up Shore and the access to Shore insurance up here, we had for years really bad flooding issues, particularly along Mulgrave Road, right along the spine of Cairns, if you like. I mean, the water was, a metre deep in places there and even more. The council, to its credit, put in retention basins on the hills that were contributing to the flooding on the low areas. And also they put in a pumping station in the CBD too, which has been quite effective. So the chances of flooding in and around the city these days are considerably less than they used to be. What's the situation with Shore? If someone's ringing you up and saying, oh, well, we've got likelihood of more rain in Far North Queensland because of La Nina or whatever, what information do you rely on when you're organising flood insurance for people in our city?
There's two pieces of key information we rely on. We rely on the mapping that is available to us and the modelling that our data people do on this. So we take into account all the information we've got about the topography of the land, the heights, the lows, but we also feed in things like the work the Cairns City Council's done, which is to their credit. These things make significant differences to the safety of people and the safety of property, but also it makes a difference to your insurance. So anything that is going to reduce the risk, we feed into our models to make sure we're charging the right premium. If you are not a flood risk, we don't charge you any premium whatsoever. So that's something that people should consider. That we often hear people say, "Oh, but I'm not in a flood risk and I'm paying a flood premium." In the case of Shore, if you're not a flood risk, you're not paying any flood premium, even though you're still covered for flood.
Now, just let me ask you, because every few months I talk to you and say, by the way, are you expanding your services? Meaning, are you embracing, for example, bigger blocks of units or whatever? Are there any changes to the arrangements with homes near, for example, the foreshores or near rivers? Are there any updates that we need to know about from Shore Insurance?
Look, not at the moment, John. We're continuing to expand the business. The business is writing lots of new business every day. We might write more than 100 to 150 new business policies every day, and that's been going on now for more than 3 years. People still are flocking to us. We have more than 50,000 households insured now around the state. So we've got a good market share. We're expanding with it. We're making sure that behind the scenes, all the things that you need in an insurance operation to service the business. People in North Queensland will know most particularly that claims are the fundamental issue. You can get a cheap policy, but if the claims aren't working for you, then for sure you've got a problem. So we're making sure that all of that stuff behind the scenes, we are doing all of our preparation for the cyclone and flood season coming ahead. We do simulations of catastrophe responses. If it happens, we want to make sure all of our technology is ready, all of our people are ready, we've got enough people. And we're doing a lot of work at the moment with builders and people like that will do the real work when it comes to recovering from that. There's a lot of components to it, but we believe we're ready for it, and we know that people out there will have a big question in their head. Will Shore be able to manage an event? We want to make sure if and when it does happen, it does happen. We are entirely ready for it.
Now, I hesitate to ask you this question finally because I know it's not your job to bang the drum about it, but where are we going at the reinsurance pool? We're hearing very little, close to nothing. It's still work in progress for everyone involved. I am not aware if any insurer has gone into the pool yet. We are still looking at the numbers. We're still working with the government and the ARPC, which is the government group that is dealing with it. We've got some concerns about what it means for our policy holders, but we are holding off. We are dealing with the Minister's office at the moment too, and I think last time we spoke, I had a bit to say around making sure that we potentially think about pausing this thing and getting some rules in place that are going to make sure that the policyholders across the state can get the lowest possible premium. We haven't backed down from that position. We want to make sure that if Shore is cheaper than the pool, then we want to make sure we can give that lower price. But if Shore isn't cheaper than the pool, then we want to give policyholders the pool price. So essentially, we just want to give people the best price we can. So we're continuing to work with the government and the ARPC to try and get the best outcome there. Excellent update as always. Good on you, Bradley. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
That's Brad Heath. He's the Managing Director of Sure, S-U-R-E, Sure Insurance. 23 past 10.